girl sitting on the plane noticed something strange. Clearly the plane had taken off for quite a while, yet they were still flying over an endless stretch of primeval forest. She hadn't had time to ask the flight attendant when they would arrive when suddenly a noise came from outside the passenger cabin. Then the helicopter's rotor abruptly stopped working. At this point, the captain in the cockpit had completely lost his composure. It turned out that the plane had lost GPS signal and become disoriented. Meanwhile, the fuel had also run out. Seeing that their only hope, the radio, wasn't getting any response, the captain in despair could only pick up his phone and start recording a video. Will.
Cordelia, mi vida, soy yo, Octavio. No sé dónde estoy. Intenté encontrar una pista, pero nada.
The plane then began to plunge uncontrollably. But luckily, the captain had previously served in a Russian airline, so the passenger cabin was fairly well preserved. Everyone suffered only minor injuries and nothing serious. However, the flight attendant, who hadn't had time to sit down, broke her neck in the violent shaking.
Nothing you can do for her. It's a cervical fracture.
Afterwards, everyone got up to check on the captain's condition. But when they opened the door, they saw a tree branch had pierced his chest.
How is he? Still breathing, if you can believe that.
Just as everyone was discussing how to save the captain, the previously damaged engine began to emit white smoke and then burst into uncontrollable flames. Garcia smelled the smoke and immediately opened the cabin door. Seeing this, everyone hurried to escape. The two people in the cockpit didn't even have time to worry about the captain's injury. They directly and roughly pulled the branch out of his chest in order to rescue him. At the same time, Garcia, who was the first to run out, didn't think about putting out the fire but instead rushed to open the luggage compartment to retrieve his belongings. Fortunately, someone on the plane remained clear-headed. Sonia grabbed a fire extinguisher and managed to extinguish the flames just in time. Although she didn't understand what could be so important in Garcia's suitcase, she didn't have time to dwell on it now. At this point, except for the flight attendant who died in the crash, 9 people remained. All of them were like headless flies, not knowing where they were. Naturally, their mobile phones had no signal or GPS. Worse, still, the surrounding heat was so intense that Travis, who was seriously ill, couldn't stop coughing. Seeing this, Lisa quickly handed a bottle of mineral water to her husband. But after taking just one sip, he realized he had to conserve resources. However, the ever-optimistic Lisa believed the government surely already knew about the incident and was probably on the way to rescue them. But some people had completely different thoughts. Sonia believed it would be difficult for a rescue team to find this place anytime soon. They had to be prepared for everything. After saying that, she decided to move the flight attendant's body outside first to prevent decomposition in the stifling environment from spreading disease to others. Seeing this, Amy was terrified and buried her face in her boyfriend's chest. But soon after, she heard a faint sound in the forest. She immediately turned her head but saw nothing, only some bat leaves falling, making the place even more eerie. At that moment, Sonia had begun collecting the remaining supplies. Lisa, fearing she was hiding something, used the excuse of helping to monitor her. But this made Sonia suspicious. By now, the captain had regained consciousness.
It's not my fault.
Nobody's blaming you.
It's not my fault. Oh.
Why did we crash?
The GPS.
What about it?
The GPS failed. Oh. I tried. What does that mean?
You were using maps, right? Did you manage to radio for help? Come on, does anyone know where we are? Hey.
Seeing the man in severe pain, Zach quickly asked Kevin, who was a doctor, to examine the wound.
Who told you I was a doctor?
On the plane. The moment we saw the flight attendant, you said she had a cervical fracture. That's medical language. Anyone else would say she had a broken neck.
Professional terminology that only a doctor would typically know. Realizing this, Kevin had no choice but to admit he was once a doctor. He then began assessing the captain's injuries.
He's got multiple lacerations and a fractured left arm, a punctured sternum, thankfully not very deep. These may or may not be life-threatening, but the chest pains, the shortness of breath, enlarged jugular vein all point to a pneumothorax, by which I mean a collapsed lung.
Will it kill him?
It could. Depends how much air is trapped between the lung and the chest wall. Too much, and it could lead to cardiovascular collapse. And that's it.
But you could operate.
No, I can't. A pneumothorax may kill him, but an emergency thoracotomy performed in the middle of the jungle with no equipment and no anesthetic definitely will.
After hearing that, everyone fell silent, able only to sit and wait for rescue to arrive. At that moment, Zach said, "The night is long, everyone can introduce themselves. At least if something like the captain's situation happens again, we can help one another." Then he took the lead in introducing himself. He said he was an insurance investigator. Nowadays, too many people intentionally cause accidents to commit insurance fraud, so his job is to identify irregularities in accidents to protect the insurance company's assets. This was also why he had been sharp enough to notice Kevin's background.
So maybe somebody brought this plane down to stop you from reporting.
Amy and Dan were a newlywed couple. They had just finished their honeymoon and were heading home. Travis and Lisa ran multiple roadside motels. They had long enjoyed a wealthy life and were now traveling the world to enjoy themselves. After hearing this, Sonia said, "I'm also traveling around the world," but when it came to work, she didn't want to say much and told everyone to mind their own business and not ask too many questions. Sensing the tension, Kevin quickly stepped in. He said he used to be a doctor but lost his license due to a medical accident. Currently, he moves back and forth between Guatemala for a medical equipment import-export business. Finally, it was Garcia's turn, whose behavior had been strange. He said he was a rookie wrestler. In his suitcase were some costumes and props, and since the mask and outfit are the essence of a wrestler, he had risked everything to save them. Zach said the current situation isn't looking good. Because of his job, he tends to think very carefully. He had previously inspected the plane and found the GPS navigation system wasn't working. It was likely the rescue team didn't even know where they had crashed. Moreover, in the captain's co-pilot compartment, there were several paper maps. Could it be that due to the loss of direction he had chosen an alternate flight path? But if that were the case, it raises another question. Commercial flight paths are usually fixed. To save costs, airlines typically only load enough fuel to complete the planned route. So why did the captain clearly know there wasn't enough fuel yet still go onto an alternate route? Zach's analysis made perfect sense. This raised suspicions in Amy's mind. She questioned Zach on how he could know so much. Zach explained that after the plane crashed, the engine suddenly caught fire. If there had still been fuel inside, the plane would have exploded. Therefore, he speculated that the captain had certainly run out of fuel, which is why he opted for an emergency landing. After hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. This explanation temporarily dispelled the suspicions toward Zach. But to truly understand the captain's intentions, they still had to ask him directly. However, the captain was now in critical condition. So Zach suggested that Kevin perform surgery on the captain. But Kevin immediately refused after hearing this. He even questioned why everyone had to listen to Zach. But before the two could argue, Sonia's words immediately drew everyone's attention. It turned out she had seen a clearing on a nearby mountain and planned to climb to the top to see if she could get a signal. Zach said, "It's already dark now. If we want to try, we'll have to wait until tomorrow." After hearing this, Travis replied, "I'm afraid that won't work. I used to have a heart condition, and the amount of medicine I have left will only last for 6 days." At that moment, the captain's coughing echoed again. Amy couldn't help but scold the others for being heartless, then rushed over to help ease the captain's pain. Kevin could no longer sit still and kept saying that even if he wanted to help, he didn't have any surgical tools. Unexpectedly, Travis pulled out a dagger from his pocket.
"You have this."
Apparently, Kevin wasn't hiding the fact that he had once been a doctor. Thanks to a series of procedures, the captain's surgery was successful. Out of fear, Amy had hidden in the aircraft cabin with her boyfriend. But suddenly the lights began to flicker. Outside the window, a shadow appeared. But when she tried to get a clearer look, it was gone. Dan thought she was too stressed and was hallucinating. Meanwhile, Lisa and Travis took advantage of the moment when Garcia went to relieve himself to eye his suitcase. Lisa had always believed he was hiding something, so she persuaded Travis to stand guard for her. Then she took the opportunity to try to open the suitcase, but unfortunately it was locked, so she ultimately returned empty-handed. At this point, the group had clearly formed opposing sides. Everyone suspected each other of not being good people. And just as they feared, once night fell, and everyone was asleep, a figure carrying clothes approached the captain and pressed down hard on his head, suffocating him to death. The next day, everyone discovered the captain had long been dead. They all assumed he had unfortunately died from an infection.
I don't understand it. There's no sign of infection or internal bleeding. I was so sure he was going to pull through.
So what killed him?
Good question.
You got any ideas?
How would I know?
Well, I guess it's what I said, post-operative shock. Somebody should have stayed with him.
Well, it's a bit late for that now.
I didn't hear you volunteer.
No. Dan's right. It should have been me. He was my patient. God damn it.
We didn't know anything about him. Tavio. He was a pilot, but was he married? Did he have kids? The stewardess? She died too. We didn't even know her name.
We don't know anything about any of us.
This is the very American TV series that went viral online this year, 9 Bodies in a Mexican Morgue. And the terrifying part is that on the 9th day when the military finally found them, not only had several people become cold corpses, but there were supposed to be 10 passports and 10 passengers, yet only 9 bodies were found. Who was the one who murdered the captain, and was it the one missing survivor? How did he manage to escape from this dangerous tropical forest? These mysteries can only be answered by the following developments in the series. By early morning on the 2nd day, due to the high temperature, the captain's corpse had begun to decompose. So Zach asked Kevin to help move the body elsewhere, but neither of them noticed that during the move the captain's phone accidentally fell to the ground. Dan saw this and quietly stepped forward to pick it up. Amy, curious, didn't understand why her boyfriend had taken the phone.
Didn't want to just leave it there.
Immediately afterward, he lied about having a stomachache and took some toilet paper before heading deeper into the forest. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was around, Dan secretly hid the dagger nearby. After Zach and Kevin had left, he ruthlessly used the dagger to cut off the captain's finger. Then he hid in a corner and used the severed finger to unlock the phone. It turned out his greed had been sparked. He wanted to steal the captain's savings. But transferring the funds required both a fingerprint and a password for dual verification. This rendered all his efforts useless. In the end, he could only hurriedly discard the severed finger and return to the group. At the same time, while organizing luggage, Sonia discovered a rectangular box. Seeing this, Travis quickly claimed it was his. He even said it was just sports equipment and didn't need to be opened for inspection. Lisa, standing beside him, quickly urged her husband to come back because she had just remembered something horrifying. She once had a neighbor whose husband strangled her to death in bed. And the appearance of the dead neighbor was exactly like the captain's. Purple face, bloodshot eyes. So she was certain the captain had been murdered. But she couldn't explain why he was killed. Just as she finished speaking, she heard a small noise from the woods behind her. But when she turned around, there was nothing there. Fearing someone might be eavesdropping, Lisa immediately went silent. On the other side, after tidying up, Sonia sat down next to Amy. She deliberately tried to investigate everyone's background. But during their conversation, she unexpectedly noticed something strange about Amy. Not only was Amy completely unaware of what she herself had said, but everything that had happened to her recently could be called miraculous. It turned out she was a rich heiress receiving treatment in the gambling city who had coincidentally met and fallen in love with a luxury car driver named Dan. After a passionate love affair, they decided to register their marriage and vowed to be together forever. That was why they were on this flight for their honeymoon. Sonia said nothing more. She could only wish them safety. Unlike the 5 people who wanted to sit and wait for rescue, the other 3 took the initiative to act. They removed the plane's GPS tracker. Although after inspecting it, they found it wasn't damaged. For it to work, they needed to attach a long enough antenna and place it somewhere high to catch a signal. Luckily, Garcia had learned electrical repair from his father, so he could easily make an antenna himself. So the group planned to head to a higher location after sunset, when the midday sun wasn't so intense. Everyone preserved their energy and fell sound asleep. But at that moment, Amy suddenly heard a noise. After opening her eyes, she saw someone deep in the forest secretly watching them. Then that figure disappeared. Along with him, 2 things also vanished. One was Travis's heart medication. It was unclear what he intended to do with it. The second was the supplies in the airplane cabin. When Sonia took inventory, she found that the belongings were much fewer than in the morning. Clearly someone had stolen them. Upon hearing this, Zach used electrical wire to tightly wrap the cabinet shut and decided that they would distribute the supplies the next day and open it all at once. This action made Sonia feel that Zach was a trustworthy person. However, she still doubted the investigator identity he claimed. So she took the initiative to admit that she was a photographer and showed him some of her works. Her openness led Zach to trust Sonia more, and this played a crucial role in the story's later developments. As the sun set, everyone hurried to set off toward the mountain peak. On the way, someone discovered a few mushrooms with bright colors.
That's Amanita bisporigera, a basidiomycete fungus, and it'll kill you very quickly.
Right.
They call them black angels.
So much for breakfast.
Travis, unable to exert himself due to not taking his medication, had to stay behind. But he didn't want to just sit and benefit from others' efforts, so he took the mysterious box and left. At the same time, Dan discovered a waterhole and quickly took off his shoes and socks, intending to jump in for a refreshing bath. Luckily, Garcia caught up and stopped him in time. This kind of primal waterhole harbored many dangers. Who knew what terrifying creatures could appear from inside? After saying this, Garcia threw Dan's shoes into the water. Unexpectedly, the floating shoes were soon dragged down to the bottom. Clearly, there had to be some giant creature inside. However, just then, a gunshot rang out from the direction of the camp. Everyone rushed back. It turned out that Travis and Lisa, seeing everyone else making efforts, also took the rifle from the mysterious box to go hunting. The trip back and forth consumed a lot of time and the sky gradually darkened. It was no longer suitable to climb the mountain and place the equipment today. So everyone could only return to the camp to look for some tools. Under Sonia's guidance, they successfully extracted water from the fire extinguisher, then used distillation to separate and purify clean drinking water. Now not only did they have enough to drink, but also unexpectedly had a hearty monkey meat meal thanks to Travis. However, the taste was truly hard to describe. Amy, pampered since childhood, couldn't accept such food and gave her portion to Travis.
Carlos, what do you got in there?
Just things. Not important.
Is that so? I seem to remember you running into the flames together.
It's not your business.
I'd say everybody's business is everybody's business right now.
Seeing this, Garcia had no choice but to remove the key from his neck. Unexpectedly, when the box was opened, it actually contained only a mask. At this point, everyone finally sighed in relief and dispelled their suspicion toward Garcia.
What is it?
It's his mask. It's what they wear, the luchadors do. Hide their identity.
No. Not to hide. You don't understand. In normal life, I'm nothing. But when I wear this, I'm Rapido. And everyone knows me. The mask doesn't hide my identity. The mask is my identity. To lose this is to lose my life.
Why are we going to Houston?
To meet my enemy, the governor. The last time we met, he cheated. He beat me with the move called the Powerbomb. So we meet again in 2 days. And this time, it's mask against mask. He won't take this from me.
2 days? You think you're gonna make it to Houston by then?
Very soon it was bedtime again. Nothing unexpected happened today. Only Travis felt a little unwell. He assumed it was because he had run out of medication and wasn't feeling well, so he didn't think much of it and quickly fell asleep. But no one noticed that someone had found a satellite phone in the bushes. After making a call, that person had a conversation with a woman. Clearly the two were sharing a secret they couldn't reveal. Time passed into the morning of the third day and everyone was awakened by a faint choking cry for help. They saw Travis foaming at the mouth, unconscious. Sonia hurried to wake Kevin. Unexpectedly, after examining him, Kevin discovered that Travis had suffered food poisoning. At this point, the only way to reduce the symptoms was to induce vomiting with salt. Sonia remembered that there were many packets of salt in the airplane cabin.
It's on the plane.
But when Amy rushed over, she found that the supply cabinet had been locked, and in just that moment, Travis painfully met his death.
Somebody wired up the storage compartment.
After hearing this, Sonia sensed something was wrong. But she was immediately interrupted by a loud scream from Liza. She insisted that someone had definitely poisoned and killed Travis. Since supplies were running low, the killer surely wanted to eliminate others to ensure their own survival. Moreover, she had told Travis that the captain died from suffocation, and it must have been because of this that the killer murdered Travis. Perhaps she would be the next target. Everyone was panicked by Liza's analysis. No one noticed Garcia sneaking into the forest. At this point, the group had split into smaller teams. Sonia and Zach had locked the cabinet so the two stayed together. She analyzed that everyone had eaten monkey meat the previous night, but the only difference was that Travis had also eaten Amy's portion. Was the original target the killer had in mind Amy, or was Amy herself the killer? Thinking it over, neither of them could reach a conclusion, so they had to pry open the cabinet to distribute the day's supplies. But surprisingly, all the food inside had already been stolen. Meanwhile, Amy was of course grouped with Dan, and after stealing the captain's phone, Dan discovered a horrifying video.
Cordelia, my love. It's me, Octavio. I don't know where I am. I've been trying to find an airfield, but nothing. I'm flying in circles. I don't have much fuel. I don't think I'm gonna make it. Even if I land, I'm dead. We all are. They won't allow us to live.
¿Necesitas escapar?
You need to escape and hide. Do you understand?
Quizás también peligras.
You might be in trouble too.
This video confirmed Liza's suspicions. It turned out someone was deliberately hunting them down, and the captain, knowing the truth, had become the killer's first target. So who exactly was the killer? What was their purpose? Why did the plane change its route and end up in this place? Why was Garcia acting so secretively? And what did the woman on the phone have to do with all this? 3 people had died in 3 consecutive days. Not only did this make everyone fearful that they might be the next victim, but it also threw the entire camp into a state of mutual distrust. Liza was convinced the killer was among them, so she no longer trusted anyone. Even when Amy brought her coffee with good intentions, she coldly poured it out without hesitation. Moreover, she warned Amy to be careful with her boyfriend Dan. Amy angrily walked into the forest alone to clear her head, only to be horrified when she discovered the man with the gun secretly spying on them earlier. She panicked and immediately turned around to run just in time to bump into Dan, who was looking for her. But when they tried to go back, the figure had already disappeared, leaving the 2 of them bewildered. At the same time, Garcia had finally finished building a signal antenna for the GPS device. And the sunlight today was conveniently covered by clouds, making it easier to climb the mountain peak and install the equipment. However, since they still didn't know who the culprit was, Zach insisted that 3 people must go together to keep an eye on each other. After discussion, they decided Kevin and Sonia would accompany Garcia while the rest stayed at the camp to monitor one another. But on the way up the mountain, Sonia discovered something strange. Garcia pulled out a piece of chewing gum to chew. As Sonia walked last, she picked up the wrapper and realized that the gum was the same snack that had mysteriously disappeared earlier. This action made Sonia suspect Garcia had ulterior motives. But for now, since only Garcia knew how to install the GPS, she didn't confront him. However, when they reached halfway up the mountain, Garcia suddenly had a problem. He was panting and said he needed to rest. Sonia, eager to escape, quickly carried the GPS unit herself, but unexpectedly, while passing over a rocky path, she slipped and tumbled down the cliff. Fortunately, Kevin, who was behind her, managed to grab her. But with his strength alone, he couldn't pull Sonia up. Luckily, at that crucial moment, Garcia stepped forward to help. Only then were they able to stop Sonia from sliding further down the cliff. Just when everyone was ready to use all their strength to pull Sonia up, she said the GPS unit was still down the cliff, and if they didn't retrieve it, all their previous efforts would go to waste. Thinking of this, she desperately reached out despite the danger. In the end, they successfully retrieved the device safely. Meanwhile, Amy was also upset back at the camp because of Liza. After thinking it through, she realized she didn't truly understand her boyfriend. Dan claimed to be a writer, but Amy had never seen him write anything. Thinking of this, Amy couldn't help but ask. Unexpectedly, Dan, who was usually gentle, suddenly became aggressive, grabbed Amy, and asked what Liza had told her. When Amy cried out that Dan was hurting her, Dan finally snapped out of his madness. Regarding the matter, he repeatedly said it was because he loved Amy too much. Because of her privileged background, he felt extremely insecure, fearing that others' words might affect their pure relationship. That's why he lost control of his emotions. But even so, Amy, blinded by love, didn't pay much attention. She only said that it was time to take her medicine. Seeing that, Dan immediately stood up obediently to get the pills. While waiting, Amy noticed Dan's coat nearby. She searched the pockets and was shocked to actually find some of Dan's secrets. Inside were business cards for lawyers with different identities, proving that Dan had been hiding his true identity. At the same time, the team of 3 finally reached the top of the mountain. Although there was still no phone signal, fortunately, the GPS unit was successfully installed. Garcia even carefully used chewing gum to secure it to prevent strong winds from severing the connection. Sonia, seeing this, couldn't help but sarcastically remark,
Lucky you had that gum.
Garcia looked embarrassed after hearing that. Very quickly, the 3 of them returned to the camp before nightfall. At this time, Amy still hadn't fully understood the secrets Dan was hiding. Unexpectedly, that shadowy figure was silently approaching. Seeing that his girlfriend hadn't returned for a long time, Dan also grew worried and ran into the forest to look for her. But just then, Amy came running out in a panic. She said she had discovered who the real culprit was. Then she led her boyfriend back to the clearing from earlier, saying that the shadowy figure had been standing behind her with a gun. The deaths of the others were definitely caused by him. Seeing that Dan still wore a dismissive expression and pretended to believe her, Amy recalled all the lies Dan had told her. In a fit of emotion, she threw the business cards at him. Seeing that Dan could only explain that those were part of his past.
But when we get home, I will tell you everything you want to know, okay?
At that moment, Kevin came to call the 2 of them to eat. Although the argument had ended, the seed of doubt had already been planted in Amy's heart, foreshadowing what was to come between the 2 of them. Thinking about the GPS signal being transmitted, they expected that tomorrow they could board the rescue flight and leave. That night, everyone slept soundly, except for Dan, who lay awake, eyes open and expressionless, lost in thought. At the same time, another person who hadn't fallen asleep was the wrestler Garcia. He was taking advantage of the time to replenish his energy, his purpose clearly to return and prepare for his first match. Turned out Garcia really had been the one stealing the snacks. After eating, he even remembered to do pull-ups to burn off the calories. Truly a self-disciplined person. Unfortunately, his death was imminent. Although Garcia had identified the killer from the beginning, the other party wore his mask, which left Garcia momentarily stunned. The next second, caught completely off guard, Garcia died. Time shifted to the 5th day. Now only 6 people were left alive. But at that moment, none of them knew Garcia had died. Although Liza repeatedly emphasized that he could have met with an accident, Sonia told everyone the truth, that Garcia had stolen food and that she had exposed him yesterday. Therefore, he might have left the camp out of shame.
Okay, I say we start looking for him. He could have gone out in the jungle and hurt himself.
But even after turning the surrounding area upside down, they couldn't find any trace of Garcia. More importantly, it was already past noon, and yet they hadn't heard even the slightest sound of the rescue plane. At that point, Kevin suggested leaving Garcia behind and climbing the mountain to check whether the GPS signal was still transmitting. This proposal was approved by Zach, so he sent Sonia and Kevin to investigate. But they didn't know that the signal transmitter on top of the mountain had already been sabotaged. On the way up the mountain, Kevin suddenly stopped.
You and Zach seem to be getting awfully close.
You think so?
Just an observation.
I trust him.
Maybe you shouldn't,
Why'd you say that?
because I don't.
And you think I should trust you?
Sonia, you nearly fell off a cliff. If I wanted to hurt you, I could have just let you go.
Sonia was just about to argue back when she suddenly noticed a flock of crows circling not far away. That was clearly a bad omen. Following the direction, they indeed found Garcia's corpse. At the same time, back at the camp, Zach suddenly woke up. Seeing everyone around still asleep, he quietly got up and left. Unexpectedly, Lisa had actually been pretending to sleep the whole time. Seeing him leave, she immediately followed. A moment later, Amy was also awakened by a voice calling her. She knew that strange figure was watching her again from the forest. Thinking of this, she grabbed the stick from the fire beside her, determined to finish off the enemy once and for all. This time, she finally saw the intruder's face clearly, but she was no longer afraid. She charged fiercely at the person. But just as she was about to stab, the figure suddenly disappeared. In front of her stood Dan.
So what happened?
Nothing.
She attacked you.
No, she didn't know what she was doing. Look, Amy is not well.
What?
Yeah. You already know that I was her limo driver. Well, when I first met her, I was taking her to a clinic in Santa Barbara. And Dad had sent her there because she had problems. She was being treated by a shrink. An army of shrinks.
Why?
Well, she's been like that her entire life, ever since she was 7 years old. She went to Bluebird Elementary. Oof. It's in Los Altos, California. In 2003, it was the scene of a mass shooting. 5 kids, 2 teachers, killed by a man called Billy Spencer, using his dad's automatic rifle.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Amy was in 1st grade. She was in the corridor when the first teacher was gunned down right next to her. And for a moment, she was standing there opposite the killer, staring him right in the eyes. And he aims at her. And he'd gunned her down, too. But just then, a door opens, he turns around, he fires there instead, and then somebody grabs a hold of Amy, drags her away.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And she never got over it. I mean, of course, she never got over it.
Everyone started to wonder whether the people who had died earlier were mistakenly killed by Amy due to her hallucinations. But Sonia speculated that she definitely couldn't be the killer, because the previous deaths could still be explained. However, for a weak woman without a single weapon like her to harm Garcia, it seemed rather unlikely.
So if not her, then who?
It's not just a question of who. It's why.
After hearing this, Zach's professional instinct suddenly made him think of something. If there had to be an explanation for why the killer committed murder, the answer must be related to the plane. He rushed to the aircraft cabin and searched everywhere, slashing the seats and turning everything upside down, but still found nothing inside. Soon night fell again. The sweltering heat of the past days finally brought thunder and lightning. Lizards in the forest hurried into the plane to take shelter from the rain. There the long-suspected truth was hidden. Beneath the plane's outer shell lay a thick stash of drugs. But at that time, no one knew anything about this. Fortunately, nothing happened on the 5th night, and everyone safely welcomed the dawn of the 6th day. But the mistrust between them only deepened. Because the previous day, when Kevin was treating Dan, he had accidentally seen a tattoo on Dan's back.
Curious about those tats of yours.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Wonder where you got them.
Is that any business of yours?
Like we said, Dan, everything's everybody's business now, right? I mean, there are no secrets.
I got him in Vegas.
What I meant was, what prison?
I'm sorry, what?
You think I haven't seen gang tattoos before? I'm from Florida. I created ex-cons. You've been inside, haven't you?
Thinking of this, he immediately asked about it, but unexpectedly Dan reacted violently and started a fight with him. Everyone heard the commotion and rushed to break them apart. At that moment, Dan blamed the hot weather to cover up the truth. Kevin didn't expose his lie, which made Dan lower his guard around him. Later, in a corner, Dan explained to them the origin of the tattoo. It turned out that he had spent several years in prison for impersonating an immigration lawyer, which was why he got the tattoo. After being released, he met the woman he loved most, Amy. And since then, he turned over a new leaf and never broke the law again. The reason he reacted so strongly was also because he didn't want his girlfriend to find out about this. However, before everyone could eliminate their doubts about him, an even worse piece of news arrived. Last night, someone had stolen all the bullets from Lisa's pouch. Now only the last bullet remained in her gun, already chambered. Clearly, the gun in Lisa's hands had made the killer feel threatened. This change made everyone even more terrified. To escape from there quickly, Zach suggested checking the condition of the locator again.
You think someone pulled the plug?
Aside from Garcia, who had died, only Sonia and Kevin knew the exact location of the locator. Clearly, Zach was suspicious of one of the two. But Zach didn't know that Sonia also had doubts about his claim of being an insurance investigator. Because earlier she had seen Lisa searching for something in the forest. To prove her innocence, Lisa told them she had been following Zach, and she insisted he had definitely hidden something nearby. After hearing this, Sonia seemed to be deep in thought. That night, a sudden heavy rain forced the group back into the airplane cabin. They had thought the sealed space would shield them from wind and rain, but before long drops of water began to fall. This made Sonia suspect there must be another layer of the plane above them. Because even though the outer shell appeared intact, water was still dripping in. After hearing this, everyone immediately tried to break through the ceiling of the plane. No one noticed that Amy next to them had suddenly fallen into another hallucination. At that moment, everyone was startled by the objects falling down. They saw that the ceiling of the plane was packed with drugs. With a glance, Zach immediately recognized it as addictive cocaine. This stuff sells for $1,800 per kilogram in Mexico, but can fetch $300 per gram in the US. This stash was likely worth $30 million. Zach's comment made Sonia once again question his profession, but it also filled in the missing piece of the story. It turned out the pilot had flown low over the jungle to transport drugs. At the same time, he had turned off the GPS to avoid being detected by US radar. But this also turned him into a headless fly, ultimately leading the plane to run out of fuel and crash. The pilot's video will confirmed that he had an accomplice. But this raised two questions. First, why did the pilot betray them? Second, the accomplice committing murder to silence others only made people more eager to uncover the reason behind his actions. Just as everyone was analyzing the situation, Lisa suddenly noticed that Amy had disappeared. Then quickly stood up, but Zach stopped him right there.
She might be safer on her own.
Are you serious? She's my wife! I'm not gonna leave her on her own.
Surprisingly, Kevin, who usually didn't like Dan, was also very proactive. This made Zach look like the bad guy. Seeing this situation, everyone had no choice but to act. Unexpectedly, Zach was right. Danger was quietly approaching. At that moment, Amy was being lured by the dark figure from earlier, but after a flash of lightning, he transformed into the killer. Just as he was about to strike, Lisa rushed over with a gun in time.
Freeze! One move and I pull the trigger. Amy? Amy? Come here. Come on! Get back to the plane, tell Dan.
Under her threat, the killer dropped his knife, but in the next flash, he vanished on the spot. He teleported and launched a surprise attack from behind. Soon after, Lisa began to struggle to breathe. In the end, she could not escape her wrongful death. Afterward, the killer even tried to take Lisa's gun, but the approaching sound of screams forced him to abandon it. The timeline moved to the 7th day. Lisa's death further narrowed the scope of the suspect. But by then, no one had the mindset to hunt for the real killer anymore. Everyone was now fearful for their own safety. Distrust grew among the group. Dan and his wife openly held onto the gun. Kevin was visibly displeased.
Just give me that.
I'm not letting this out of my sight.
Someone stole the bullets, remember? It's useless anyway.
I ask you, why do you want it?
Because maybe you're the one who stole them.
Well, if you want it, come take it from me. But just remember, there's one in the chamber.
Seeing this, Zach once again played the good guy, stepping in to mediate and calling for unity. But to Sonia, his words sounded extremely fake. Sonia shared her story.
I was getting married. Mike and I, we had it all planned. Traditional wedding, old-fashioned church, English countryside. Mike was a musician, and we were doing a lot of parties. A lot of drugs. It never occurred to me that I was making some motherfucker rich. One of you, maybe.
Sonia, where are you going with all of this?
Don't you worry, Zach. I won't tell you the whole story. I'll just cut to the end. When I wake up in bed with Mike and he isn't breathing. He'd had a complete cardiovascular breakdown. Too much partying, too much cocaine, too much me. And that's when I knew that I had to get out of London and get as far away as I could and try and find some way of helping people with their lives instead of helping to kill them. The thing is, I know the truth. Lisa told me something and I checked it out and she was right. I know who's behind all of this.
She then pulled out a handful of bullets from her bag. It turned out she had found the place Lisa said Zach had hidden things. Not only did she find the missing bullets but also a handgun. Most importantly, there was a satellite phone next to them. She suspected Zach had secretly been in contact with the outside world all along. Faced with this situation, Zach finally confessed his identity.
You know I'm not capable of any of this.
You lied to us.
I had no choice. I was investigating you. The plane, Aero Alux. I'm with the DEA. Why else do you think I carried that weapon? Come on, think it through, Sonia. If I wanted to hurt you, I could have shot every one of you one after another, and there would have been nothing you could have done. Yeah, you found my stuff. Did you also get my wallet? My ID's inside.
But when Kevin opened it, Zach's anti-narcotics ID card was missing.
Whatever you think, whatever this looks like, you've got it wrong and you're making a mistake.
Shut up, okay?
I took the bullets and I hid them in a pit along with my wallet, gun, and ID. After Carlos was killed, it was clear that one of you was a psychopathic maniac. So I didn't think it was a good idea having a rifle and live ammunition lying around. But I didn't drop any of them. You think I'm that stupid? Somebody did that on purpose. They wanted you to find my stuff.
Give me one good reason why any of us should believe you.
Because it's obvious. You've seen for yourself. Aero Alux is a front. It's one of a dozen small airlines we've been investigating for months.
Your ID just got lost in the woods?
No. Somebody took it at the same time as they planted that radio. They worked out who I was and they neutralized me. But if you buy into their story, if you don't believe me, then you're finished. All of you. You turn on me, and we'll all wind up dead.
However, his continuous lies had caused everyone to lose trust in him. Dan, now furious, knocked Zach unconscious with the butt of the gun. Now Sonia found herself in a difficult position. From her perspective, aside from her and the weak Amy, any of the others, Zach, Dan, or Kevin, could be the killer responsible for all the deaths. But since she couldn't confirm whether Zach's identity was real or fake, she couldn't make a decisive move. Zach urged her to think rationally. Dan had a criminal record and was now in possession of a weapon. Last night, Kevin had also rushed out of the plane first. Both had ample time to commit a crime. But this time, Sonia remained unmoved.
You're asking me to trust you. Why did you never trust me?
Zach didn't completely trust Sonia. She actually had her own hidden pain. Since both she and her fiancé had been involved in both selling and using drugs, he couldn't fully rule out her connection to the drug shipment. But at that moment, Sonia didn't want to waste any more words on him. Seeing that he still refused to reveal the satellite phone's password, she walked away to discuss with the other two. Dan wanted to use violence to force a confession, but since Sonia still had doubts, she decided to first check the GPS tracker. In the end, they decided to do both tasks at the same time. Whoever drew the short stick would stay behind to torture Zach for information, while the others would go up the mountain to check the tracker. Unfortunately, Kevin drew the short stick.
So what now, Doc?
You tell me.
You want the code?
I don't understand you, Zach. Why kill Octavio or Lisa?
I did not.
You're really gonna tell me that?
It's the truth.
So who then? Sonia? Or little driver Dan? He couldn't even fake being a two-bit lawyer.
You.
Although he looked fierce, swinging his fists after a round of punches and kicks, he still couldn't get Zach to speak. Meanwhile, the Narcotics Bureau finally noticed Zach's disappearance. They sent 2 agents to the airline. Unexpectedly, the person who received them was Cora, the captain's girlfriend, the one who had answered the phone earlier. Given that the captain had previously lost his license due to drug use, Cora said the company had given him a chance to start over. It was a reasonable answer, and the 2 agents could only leave in the end. Back at the campsite, Kevin had escalated his methods on Zach. He used scissors to rip out Zach's toenail. The numbing pain was enough to make anyone flinch just by looking. At that moment, the team of 3 had reached the mountain peak. After inspecting it, Sonia discovered that the GPS tracker had stopped working. Luckily, after plugging it back in, it soon started transmitting a signal again. This time, the Narcotics Bureau finally caught the signal. But due to outdated equipment and it being an analog signal, they could only pinpoint the coordinates within a 20-kilometer radius, in a dense rainforest that was still a massive area. Fortunately, the Mexican military had a camp near the jungle and they had helicopters. Very good news for Zach's rescue. The director advised the two agents not to get too involved as relations between the two countries were currently strained.
You go across that border again, you could wind up in jail.
What if I asked you for 24 hours leave?
On what grounds?
Emotional.
What she didn't know was that someone holding a makeshift knife was approaching the tied-up Zach. It looked like Zach was in grave danger, but surprisingly the figure turned out to be Sonia. It turned out Zach's earlier words had sparked some thoughts in her. If Zach really was one of the drug traffickers with the pistol in his hand, he could have killed everyone on the first day instead of resorting to stealthy murders which only increased the risk of being exposed. And after ruling out Garcia, who was already dead, and herself, only Kevin could have tampered with the GPS tracker on the mountain. Releasing Zach now could create a three-way balance. So after thinking it through, she chose to free Zach and warned him not to come near the camp again.
But I swear to God, if you come anywhere near me, I will shoot you.
Early the next morning, everyone discovered that Zach had escaped. Looking at the cut rope, it was clear that someone had deliberately let him go. This made the atmosphere in the camp tense again. After confirming that it was Sonia who did it, Kevin angrily said he no longer wanted to stay with her. Dan, who had the gun, also told Amy to pack their things. Since the signal had been received, rescue was surely on the way. He would rather leave with Amy than trust anyone else. At this point, the already small number of survivors felt even more isolated. And just as Dan predicted, the rescue team dispatched by the Mexican army had already set out. But in the end, the two of them couldn't hold on until help arrived. Their shirts were soaked with blood on the back. Sonia, who was the first to discover the scene, quickly scanned the surroundings, only for Zach to unexpectedly emerge from the forest the next second.
You. Why are you here? I told you what I'd do if I saw you again. Get away from me.
I didn't do this.
Then who did? There are only three of us left now. You, me, and Kevin.
Kevin was the last to arrive. Seeing the situation, he immediately picked up the rifle from the ground.
Come on, we don't need to do this.
Look around, Zach. Three of us left, and I know I didn't kill Dan and Amy, which means it was probably one of you. So yeah, we kind of have to do this.
Why would either of us want to kill them?
Because they knew about the coke. That's what this is about, isn't it? You running drugs like some fucking cartel for two?
If I was working with Zach, why would I hand him over to you? I found his hiding place. I took his gun.
Misdirection. You guys are pros.
You could be the one doing the misdirecting, Kevin. That is even your real name.
You'd have fallen to your death if it weren't for me. I should have let you go.
You didn't let me go because you needed the transmitter.
Wrong. I didn't need you then, and I don't need you now.
This is going nowhere. Drop the guns.
Zach, fearing something unexpected would happen, hurriedly tried to persuade both to put down their weapons. Unexpectedly, this action directly made the barrel of the gun point at him. At the peak of this intense moment, the sound of helicopter blades finally echoed overhead. They immediately realized the rescue team was nearby. But what none of them expected was that due to the thick cloud cover obscuring the view below, their location was not seen by the pilot, who directly changed course and flew away. Seeing this, the group fell into disappointment again. Zach quickly urged everyone to put aside their doubts and head to the mountain peak to light a fire before the next helicopter arrived. At that point, the pilot would definitely find them by the smoke column. However, just as Kevin put down his weapon, intending to reconcile, he saw that Sonia still hadn't lowered her pistol. She demanded Kevin throw away his gun completely before talking about cooperation. With no other choice, Kevin unloaded all the bullets and threw the gun into a nearby puddle. Right after, Sonia urged everyone to head up the mountain together.
No, I'm not going up there with you two.
Why not?
Because, despite your little speech just now, I'm not feeling particularly safe with you. And certainly not with everybody's favorite insurance guy.
I'm not gonna hurt you, Kevin.
Yeah, you say that. But we're hiking up the escarpment. Who's going first? Who's in the middle? Who's last?
What does that matter?
Because I want to get there alive!
So he suggested letting the other two go ahead while he quietly followed behind. Hearing his reasoning, Sonia didn't mind. After all, she now possessed the only gun in the group and wasn't afraid the others would try anything. At the same time, CLE, acting alone, was arrested by Mexican authorities as soon as she reached the border. They no longer allowed American organizations to operate in this area in order to prevent them from using it as a pretext for secret incursions. This left her stuck in an office, anxiously waiting. Meanwhile, Zach, with his injured toe, was having difficulty walking. They could only hike slowly, resting often along the steep mountain path. And just as the two were taking a break, a gunshot suddenly rang out from below the mountain. Thinking of Kevin's rifle having been thrown into the water, both of them panicked and rushed back down. But when they arrived, they found Kevin lying on the ground with a bullet wound in his back. When he fell, his head had landed in the puddle. At this point, his face had already been eaten away by piranhas in the water. Even seasoned moviegoers would now start to question, was Amy's previous hallucination actually real? Was there really an 11th person in the deep forest? But where had he been hiding all these days, and what had he eaten? This became the film's biggest mystery. At this point, Sonia no longer had the strength to care. Because of just a short delay, they had missed the best time to climb to the peak. Seeing that it was getting dark, the two finally decided to hide in the airplane cabin. Shortly after, Zach used rope to tightly lock the cabin door. That way, if there really was an 11th person outside trying to get in to commit a crime, would surely make noise. However, just as Zach drifted off to sleep, Sonia suddenly opened her eyes beside him. In the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. A black hand stealthily picked up the satellite phone hidden in the shadows. Not long after, Cora answered the call. Previously, she had been secretly monitoring every move of the military. By now, she had full knowledge of the personnel and weaponry in the camp. On the 9th day, the weather remained clouded. Although Zach and Sonia had arrived at the mountain peak early due to the thick fog, they could only sit and wait. At this point, Zach felt increasing pain in his toe. After taking off his shoe and sock, he discovered the wound was infected. Sonia kindly offered to boil some water to treat the injury, although Zach hurriedly tried to stop her and advised that staying together was the best choice. This foolish woman not only refused to listen but insisted she would only gather some things nearby and that it was definitely safe. Unexpectedly, not long after, she vanished into the thick fog. And right then, danger struck again. The next second, a miserable scream rang out. Zach hurriedly called out at the top of his lungs, but the only answer he received was the barrel of a black gun. Zach, seeing the situation, also wanted to escape into the fog, but unfortunately behind him was a cliff. In desperation, he could only voice the question lingering in his heart.
What I don't get, what I haven't understood from the start, is nobody knew it was there, except maybe the pilot, and so you killed him. But what about the rest of us? We were no threat to you. We didn't know anything until you started attacking us. What did you stand to gain by killing us? Answer me!
But in the end, Zach never received an answer. After confirming that Zach had fallen off the cliff, the culprit found Sonia, who was dazed and unconscious. This time, he finally removed his mask.
You bastard.
By this point, everyone has probably guessed who the culprit is, but do you know why he killed? And how will he escape from this dense jungle? The upcoming developments will surely leave you speechless. By noon on the 9th day, the rescue team finally detected the locator on the mountaintop. But strangely, there was no one nearby. With no other choice, the military landed there. They used that location as the center to carry out a rescue operation within a 5-kilometer radius. Not long after, they found the crashed airplane. Continuing the search in the forest, they discovered 9 corpses neatly laid side by side. After a preliminary examination, the commander concluded that they had all been murdered, but to determine the exact cause of death, a forensic autopsy was needed. However, when they packed up and returned to the camp, they discovered that there were 10 passports on the plane. Connecting this to the fact that one person had not yet been found in the forest, the commander deduced that this person must be the killer. So he ordered the military to continue the search. At the same time, to be cautious, he invited a professional forensic doctor to perform the autopsies. Unexpectedly, the phone call between the two had been eavesdropped on by Cora, who had been waiting for it. She successfully intercepted the forensic doctor on the only road leading to the camp and struck while the doctor was distracted. Immediately afterward, Cora impersonated the forensic doctor and entered the camp. The soldiers, having never seen the real forensic doctor before, suspected nothing. Before long, they brought her to the morgue. Inside the morgue, a sharp blade slowly pierced through one of the body bags, and a corpse that was supposed to be dead stood up. It turned out he had used Travis's drugs to fake his death and hide in the bag, using the military's help to escape the jungle smoothly. The one who could come up with such a meticulous plan was none other than Kevin, the person no one had suspected. He was seen walking up to the corpses with a dagger, preparing to dissect all of them. But just then, there was a sudden noise outside the door. It turned out Cora was trying to stop a soldier from entering the morgue, explaining that she feared he couldn't handle the bloody scene and might suffer psychological trauma. But the dedicated soldier insisted on staying to supervise. Unexpectedly, he would soon regret that decision. As soon as he stepped in, Kevin, who was hiding in the shadows, knocked him out. Seeing the situation unfold, Cora's reaction was far from the excitement one might expect. It wasn't until Kevin spoke that she snapped back to reality, forcing a warm smile at him. Although Kevin felt something was off, he said nothing, too intoxicated by the thrill of victory. He then pulled out a packet of drugs from a corpse with a cut-open abdomen, which turned out to be the cleverest part of the whole plan. Rewinding to the first day, the captain had almost exposed their drug smuggling operation, so Kevin brutally silenced him by killing him. The captain's body then inspired Kevin with the idea of hiding the drugs inside corpses. The next day, he used poisonous mushrooms to kill Travis, aiming to get his hands on the heart medication Travis carried. Kevin knew that the drug could induce a state of feigned death, perfect for fooling the military and escaping. One by one, he assassinated the other passengers, partly to conceal his identity as the killer and partly to gather enough bodies to smuggle the drugs. He also contacted his girlfriend Cora, both to help destroy the evidence and to aid in their escape plan, which involved killing anyone in their way. The two of them quickly poured gasoline throughout the room and set it on fire to eliminate all evidence. But they overlooked one detail. The soldier who had earlier passed out from the smoke had regained consciousness. Around the same time, CLE finally received word that the crashed flight had been located. She feared her husband might be among the 9 recovered bodies. The military reluctantly made an exception and allowed her to identify the remains. Just then, a loud explosion rang out and a black SUV was seen speeding away. All attention shifted to it. No one realized that things inside the morgue had already taken a dark turn. The soldier had been attacked from behind and could now only confirm that the killer was one of the 9 corpses. But with the other 8 bodies completely burned, there was no way to tell who the murderer was. At this point, someone might remember that Zach was still in the jungle. Here's the thing. Zach was like a superhuman. He'd been shot twice and had fallen from a cliff dozens of meters high, only to be saved by a thick tree branch that broke his fall. It's absurd, really. And even if he had somehow survived, the earlier rescue teams hadn't been able to find him. But Zach had pulled out a pair of sunglasses and used them to reflect sunlight, miraculously signaling for help and getting rescued. On the 10th day after surgery, Zach was out of danger. With his near-superhuman resilience, he quickly told everyone what had happened over the past few days. When CLE mentioned that 3 of the corpses were women, Zach immediately figured out who the killer was. By eliminating the 3 female victims, all the remaining men were people Zach had seen die with his own eyes. Except Kevin, whose face had been mutilated by piranhas and was unrecognizable. Zach guessed that Kevin must have dressed another body in his clothes, then removed the bullets from his gun and used them to knock on the casing to make noise, creating the illusion of his own death. Now all that was needed was to trace the airline's records to find Kevin's trail. Unbeknownst to Kevin, his downfall was near. He had just prepared a grand mushroom feast for Cora and was grumbling about the captain's incompetence. It turned out the reason they had spent hours flying without leaving the jungle was because the captain had turned off the GPS to avoid U.S. military radar surveillance. But this also caused him to lose his bearings, eventually running out of fuel and crashing the plane. While he spoke, Cora suddenly felt her throat tightening. It turned out she had eaten a highly poisonous mushroom from the jungle. And so the final mystery was unraveled. Remember the video Will the Captain recorded in the very first episode? The girlfriend Cordelia he mentioned was actually Cora's full name. It was you, wasn't it? After watching the video, Kevin's intense reaction made sense. He had just found out that his girlfriend had cheated on him. Very quickly, Cora began convulsing and died. Kevin then rushed to the plane, intending to smuggle the drugs to the U.S. alone for a massive profit. But he didn't realize that Zach had already led the authorities to the location. As soon as Kevin took off, Zach opened fire like a madman. In the end, Kevin could only watch helplessly and furiously as Zach failed to stop him in time. Flying once again over the rainforest, Kevin suddenly heard a loud alarm. To his horror, the fuel tank was empty again. Turns out Zach's wild shooting spree had hit the fuel tank. The next moment, the engine's roar cut out. But this time, unlike before, Kevin had no backup, no tricks left up his sleeve. Just a small stash of drugs on board. And that's the end of today's story. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the film, please give us a like and subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.